All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we are diving into a story you probably think you know. A man, a woman, a well. Sounds simple, right? A classic love story. But oh, you are in for a surprise. When you dig into the original text and the commentaries, this whole scene is just packed with tension, incredible strength, and some pretty sneaky calculations.
Yeah, that's what we're getting into. I mean, think about it. A love story that's also a job interview, a family reunion, and a heist film all rolled into one. This one meeting is just a masterclass in subtext. Every little thing, from moving a huge rock to crying, it all has these hidden layers that totally change the game for these characters.
Okay, so let's set the scene. Here comes our main guy, Jacob. Now, he's on the run from his brother, Esau, which is pretty stressful. But he's also just gotten a promise from God that he'll be protected. So the great commentator Rashi says this good news literally lifted up his feet. You can just picture him, right? Traveling with this newfound energy, practically skipping along right to the very well that's about to change everything. So he arrives at this well, and immediately something feels weird. He sees 3 whole flocks of sheep just hanging out with their shepherds. But here's the thing. Nobody's working. They're just sitting there, waiting.
And Jacob, being Jacob, he's got to know why. I mean, it's broad daylight. The sun's beating down, there's work to do, but you've got all these guys just chilling by a well that's full of water. It doesn't make any sense.
So the shepherds explain their whole system. Turns out, the stone on top of the well is absolutely massive. It's a team effort. No one guy can move it by himself. So the rule is, they all have to wait until every single flock is there before they can join forces and roll that thing away.
Jacob is not having it. He's like, are you kidding me? It's the middle of the day. Water the sheep and get them back to pasture. And this is where Rashi's commentary is so cool. He says Jacob is basically calling them lazy. He's looking at this whole situation and thinking, what a waste of a perfectly good workday. He's really challenging their whole way of doing things.
But this whole debate about being efficient, it gets cut short, because just as they're talking, someone new shows up. And just like that, Jacob goes from being this curious bystander to the main character in a huge action scene.
And who is it? It's Rachel, his cousin, the daughter of his uncle Laban. And she's a shepherdess, bringing her father's flock. For Jacob, you have to understand, he's traveled so far to find his family. This is the moment. And wow, does he react. The second he sees Rachel, it's like he's supercharged. He just walks right over to that giant stone, you know, the one that needed a whole crew of shepherds to move, and he rolls it away, all by himself. Rashi's description here is just perfect. He says it was as easy for Jacob as popping a cork out of a bottle. We're talking superhuman strength here. But then, things get weird. Right after this incredible feat of strength, he kisses Rachel and then just bursts into tears. And we're not talking a single happy tear. The text says he wept loudly. It's a total breakdown. So you have to wonder, what's going on? Why go from hero mode to a weeping mess in seconds?
Well, Rashi gives us 2 really powerful reasons. The first is pretty mind-blowing. He had a prophetic vision. He saw, in that moment, that Rachel, the woman he would love, wouldn't be buried with him. It's like he's grieving for a future loss. The second reason is much more immediate. He was completely ashamed. See, he remembered the story of his grandfather's servant showing up with 10 camels loaded with gifts to find a wife for Isaac. And Jacob? He arrived with absolutely nothing. Why? Because his own nephew had robbed him blind on the journey.
Okay, so after that very intense introduction, Jacob tells Rachel who he is, and she, of course, runs straight to her dad, Laban. And this is where the story takes another turn, because this happy family reunion is really not what you think it is.
Now, on the surface, it looks great. The text says Laban heard the news about his nephew and ran to greet him. All right, a sweet uncle so excited to see his sister's son. It looks like pure family love.
But Rashi tells us what was really going on. He says Laban ran because he was expecting to see a caravan of camels loaded with treasure. Just like last time. That hug? He was patting Jacob down, searching for gold. And the kiss? Get this, he was checking Jacob's mouth to see if he was hiding any pearls or gems in there. It's just pure greed disguised as a warm welcome. So after finding absolutely nothing, Laban says, "You are truly my bone and my flesh." And, you know, that sounds nice. It sounds like he's finally accepting him as family. But Rashi says, nope, it's the total opposite. What Laban is actually saying is, well, you've got no money, so I guess I have to take you in. Family duty and all that. You can stay for a month. And it wasn't a free ride either. Jacob had to start working for him right away, taking care of the flocks just to earn his keep.
So Jacob is now part of this pretty complicated family. And it's here that he meets the two women who are going to define his entire future, Laban's daughters.
The text draws a really stark contrast between the two of them. It goes into detail about how beautiful Rachel is, shapely and gorgeous. But Leah, the older one, all we're told is that she had weak eyes. That's it.
But again, Rashi gives us this absolutely heartbreaking backstory. Her eyes weren't weak like she had a medical problem. They were weak from crying. Constantly. Why? Because everyone just assumed that the two sisters would marry their two cousins. And since Leah was the older daughter, she was destined to marry the older son, who was the violent, wicked Esau. So she literally cried her eyes out, praying she wouldn't have to marry him.
And really, that's the whole point, isn't it? What looks like a simple boy meets girl at a well story is actually this incredibly dense drama. You've got prophecy, shame over being poor, an uncle's greed, and a woman's deep, deep fear for her future. It just goes to show you, sometimes the real story isn't what's on the page, but everything that's hiding between the lines.